can see two very distinct peaks in the violence that Israel was afflicted on the Gaza Strip.
There's evidence of deliberate targeting of civilians, of disproportionate attacks against civilians, often in their homes.
And each one of them comes at the wake of a suspicion or, in fact, a capture of an Israeli soldier by Hamas. At that moment, all hell breaks loose.
Indiscriminate attacks, such as with the use of artillery fire in densely populated civilian areas.
Attacks on first responders, attacks on ambulances, on hospitals.
And wanton destruction of civilian buildings, of civilian infrastructure. All of those are war crimes.
Receiving these figures all in one go, 500 children were killed. It is of course extremely disturbing already, but starting to see it in relation to each specific event in many different strikes over the entire conflict is something that is always very disturbing for me, even after working on this platform for more than a year. One of the first things we've been looking at when exploring the Gaza platform was the highly deadly strikes during the Gaza conflict. And the numbers are quite impressive. There were at least 27 strikes that resulted in at least 10 or more casualties.
The Israeli military used artillery fire in densely populated residential areas.
An artillery shell cannot be specifically targeted, and it will never be more specific than 50 meters one way or the other, but at least the size of a football pitch. Now that is an area weapon. Now when that is used in any urban environment, how can one be sure there are no civilians or non-combatants in that area?
And it completely flouts what is a fundamental principle of the laws of war, which is the principle of distinguishing between fighters and civilians. You don't use a weapon such as artillery in a situation where you can't distinguish.
Amnesty International investigated a number of cases where a large number of people from the same family have died in this home. So in one case, for example, the Abu Jami' family in Khan Yunis, there were 24 members of the family in the home. And as they were preparing to break their fast during the month of Ramadan, one fighter who was fleeing an area of fighting had come and hid underneath a balcony outside of the home. Now Israel bombed the house and killing 24 people in it. That attack is clearly disproportionate.
In most cases, the strikes that we have do not mention any military targets. Moreover, if we're talking about 1,100 different strikes on different houses, could there all be legitimate military targets? It doesn't seem likely.
The Israeli military dropped leaflets on areas saying, we're going to attack this area, get out.
Sometimes they announce it with microphones. They can even enter into the telephone system. You can get an SMS or a phone call.
אתה מדבר עברית? מצוין. מה שמך? מה שלומך? הכל בסדר?
The problem was that they gave no advice on where those civilians should flee to. They gave no safe route out of that area. So a completely ineffective warning.
If I am sitting in a home and I get this, what they call a knock on the roof, it is not necessarily a clear sign of a warning. I may think it's an attack. I may choose to sit at home and hide under the bed. Shooting a rocket at a people's house can and did endanger people's lives. It can kill, it can injure.
These are not effective. Families did not know that they were being warned. Sometimes they didn't even have enough time to evacuate the building, and they died while in the process of leaving that building. If you stay in your house despite a warning missile, Israeli lawyers would consider you as a voluntary human shield. The Israeli military interpretation of people who are not evicting their house after warning is that they are participating in warfare, therefore losing their legal protection as civilians.
The Gaza platform also reveals the widespread use of tank shells in areas where civilians were living. In other cases, they'd fled there from other areas that had been bombed and attacked by the Israeli military during the conflict.
These medics have been attacked, ambulances have been bombed, and the medics coming out of ambulances to kind of attend to people have been shot at. In one case, one medic was shot at by an Israeli soldier in the leg, and he was left there to bleed until he died. Medics should be not only protected, but also their work should be facilitated. And what we've seen here is that Israel has worked completely against that. This is a war crime, just pure and simple.
Both the scale of these attacks and, in many cases, the fact that there was no apparent military target either inside or in the proximity of those buildings throws up a really striking question about the extent to which the Israeli military were committing wanton destruction.
So attacks on infrastructure are seen very much as collective punishment of an entire population.
What we're calling on the international community, obviously key governments in that to do, is to support the work of the International Criminal Court to ensure that at the end of the day, as has never happened to date, there is justice for those who've lost loved ones in the last conflict.